Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one where we dive into tons of interesting topics, and another where we dive into tons of family-friendly books and stories. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about palm trees. Hey, if you live in Florida, Southern California, Hawaii, any other warm parts in the world, palm trees are like paint on the wall. You just totally disregard them. They're part of the furniture. You take them for granted, right? You see them along streets, shopping centers, everywhere you go. But if you grew up in a place like I did up in the Northeast, hey, I just went down to Florida to visit my parents, and it just is such a switch that you turn on. Yes, you expect it to be hot down in the South, but in the tropical regions, you see those palm trees swaying in a room, and it's like, yeah, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Toto. But exactly, I don't think we're in New Jersey anymore, Jasper. So we will take a deep dive. Listen, if you live down in the warm climates and you look out your window right now and you see a palm tree, we're going to tell you a bunch of things you may not know. And certainly, if you've lived up in the north, the Northeast, Minnesota, we're going to learn about palm trees and what's up with them. So, let's learn. First of all, it's not a tree. Believe it or not, we still call them trees, and that, as much as I've done with the research on this, yes, no one down south calls them anything other than palm trees. Yes, they may say palms, but they're botanically different from oak, maple, pine trees and any other trees that you're familiar with. In fact, they belong to the plant family Ericaceae. There are roughly 2,500 of species, of palms around the world. And palms belong to a group of flowering plants called monocots. That puts them botanically closer to grasses, lilies, orchids, bananas, and bamboo than to your typical oak or maple tree. That's why their trunk looks so different. Think of a typical oak tree. Every year the trunk grows outward. New layers of wood are added, creating annual growth rings, right? You chop down that tree, you see the rings. If the tree is cut down, those rings will tell you its age. A palm doesn't grow that way. A palm trunk generally reaches approximately its mature diameter relatively early, and then it grows mainly upward rather than continually getting wider by adding annual rings. Cut through a palm trunk and you don't find the familiar rings of an oak or maple. Instead, the inside is like bundles of vascular tissues, and they're scattered through this fibrous background. That's one reason a palm trunk, when you look at it, it almost looks like a giant telephone pole. And here's another important difference. A typical palm tree usually has one main growing point at the very top. That's where the new leaves originate. Damage the side of an oak tree, and it may be able to keep growing. But if you completely destroy the single growing point of many palm species, the entire palm tree will eventually die. So why don't we have palm trees in New Jersey? The answer is simple. Winter. Most palm species evolved in tropical and subtropical environments where the prolonged freezing temperatures are definitely uncommon. It's not simply that palms like heat. The real problem is the damage that the cold weather can do to the palm tree. Freezing temperatures damage the leaves, and more importantly, they can damage the critical growing point that I mentioned up on the top. That's why as you go north, let's say you're going up the 95 corridor, eventually you will see the palms disappear. Now, one point on this with the freezing temperatures, some palm species can survive the freezing temperatures. One of the toughest is called the needle palm. It can tolerate temperatures several degrees below 0 Fahrenheit under the right conditions. Another is called the dwarf palmetto. It's a low-growing native palm whose natural range reaches all the way into North Carolina. So they're not always typical tropical plants. They're more diverse than that. So where do the palm trees disappear? If you've ever driven north, I've done it once, or driven south, maybe twice, all the way from, New England down to Florida along Interstate 95. Well, bottom line, you're not going to see a sign where it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's palm tree country. Instead, they gradually become more common. You may see planted palms farther north than you would expect. It's really the Carolinas when they start disappearing as you go north. I mentioned that dwarf palmetto. Well, it does reach North Carolina again as you're going north. But the bottom line, it's if you're heading south, you're really seeing them once you reach coastal South Carolina. Then you're into Georgia and especially Florida. They're part of the landscape. But no doubt, once you hit that North Carolina range, you're going to stop seeing them. Bottom line, in terms of down in the South, all across the Gulf Coast, including Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, although the species and abundance of the palm trees change, depending upon the winter temperatures, they're still there. And then head west. There are palms in Arizona, Nevada, California, especially in the warmer desert regions. So that raises an interesting question. Can a palm tree live in a desert? Because not all palms need a tropical rainforest. Some palms are adapted to surprisingly dry environments, provided that they can reach some type of water. That's why palms can thrive around like little desert springs and groundwater irrigation spots. But the real rule isn't palm trees equals tropical rainforest. It's more like different palm species have adapted to different warm climates. Some like rain, some tolerate droughts, right? Some like the salt spray. Just like any other plants, there's so many different varieties and species, but your typical palms you will find, obviously, in Florida and into the Caribbean. Now, how far south do they go? South America contains a huge variety of palm trees, particularly in tropical regions such as the Amazon rainforest, right, in the Amazon basin. But eventually, as you travel, right, instead of traveling north, now we're traveling south, you go into the colder and southern end of South America, palms become obviously less common. Now, those leaves on the palms, what are they called? They're called fronds. And there's basically two types of appearance of these fronds. They're either fan-shaped, think of your fingers being spread apart, and then there's feather-shaped fronds. The ones that have the long center stalk with many leaflets extending from the sides almost are like a gigantic feather. But here's the thing about identifying the different palms, whether it's fan or feather. They won't tell you the exact species, but it's a good first clue. Are the palm's leaves sharps? I was walking past some at the base like they were like bushes or hedges, and you have to be careful. Some have seriously sharp spines, particularly along the leaf stalk. For example, date palms. They have these really sharp spines near the bases of their leaves. The needle palm takes things even further. It produces this black needle-like spine that can reach 6 to 10 inches long. So if you're walking, especially past a low-growing palm or palmetto, and you're thinking, yeah, this looks sharp, like I did, I went to touch one, and I'm like, whoa, this is not something you're just going to run into like you're going to catch a baseball or something. You're going to come out bleeding. It's not a fun thing for landscapers, no doubt. The tips of individual leaflets can also feel stiff and pointed, but the really dangerous structures of some species are actual spines associated with the leaf stalk or trunk. Now, I just mentioned the low-hanging fruit, right? That's figuratively speaking. We're not talking about the fruit yet. But you're constantly seeing in places like Florida, the low palms growing near the ground. Not every palm becomes a 50-foot tree. Some stay low. One of the most famous examples is the saw palmetto. They commonly grow about 3 to 8 feet high and can form large spreading patches. Those are among the most abundant native palms in Florida. So if you're looking across a landscape, definitely in Florida, and you see what appears to be thick underbush like we experience hedges, right? And they're filled with palm leaves, well, you're looking at palms. They can barely seem like they have trunks because their stems seem underground or even run along the ground. That's another misconception. A palm doesn't have to look like the classic tall palm tree, like on a postcard. Now, that telephone pole, that bark, that tall palm tree, right? It obviously doesn't look like the maple or the oak bark. And technically, it isn't bark in quite the same sense. What you're seeing are scars or remnants left behind by the old palm leaves. A new palm leaf grows from the crown. Now, we have to stop here just so it's clear, especially for my northern friends. The crown is simply the top part of the palm tree where all those green fronds, remember, all those leaves grow out from the trunk. So right in the center of the top of that crown, where you kind of see everything going out from the center, that's the palm's growing point. It's almost called, very often it's called the heart or the bud. Those new fronds begin there and they gradually push outward. That's why the center is so important. It's the growing point. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you damage that, you destroy that growing point right there in the center, most species won't survive that. Now, assuming nothing is destroyed, it keeps growing naturally and everything's fine, eventually the new palm leaf gets old, obviously, and dies. And again, depending upon the species, it may fall just cleanly to the ground or it may leave part at its base attached to the trunk. And when you're talking about the trunk, again, this is for my younger members of the audience, you're talking about the whole telephone pole, for lack of a better word. It's not just, obviously, the base. It's the center parts going up and down of the tree. Now, if those leaves don't cleanly fall, that's why you'll see the brownish, deadish part as the trunk is getting higher and higher. Now, over many years, those old attachment points, they create distinctive patterns that you do see, like I said, running up the trunk. Some of the palms look smooth, some looked rings, others look rough and almost like woven, and some appear to have chunks of old leaves stuck all over them. It's essentially a record of where previous leaves were attached. Now, here's something funny. My parents outside their home, in the back, they have a regular looking tree. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this almost looks like an oak tree. And sure enough, it is. So yes, oak and maple trees do grow down in Florida too. But when I was looking at the actual tree, I'm like, wow, no, these leaves look different. One of the popular species of oak trees down there is called the southern live oak. Now, speaking of popularity, what I got to say right up front, because I haven't mentioned it, the most popular palm species, when you're thinking of the postcard palm tree with that long trunk, you're talking about the Florida royal palm. And yes, you have the queen palm and you have the cabbage palmetto, but it's the royal palm that is the quintessential one that you're visualizing in your head. Do palm trees have flowers? Yes, they do. They're flowering plants. Now, again, depending upon the species, but take the cabbage palmetto. It produces this enormous branching flower structure that contains thousands of tiny, creamy white flowers which attract the bees. And the reason that they, you can't necessarily always see them. They're clustered very often near the crown. And how about, since we're mentioning pollination here, well, what about fruit? Yes, they produce fruit. And again, I'm walking with my brother, taking a nice journey around, and we're on this cart path, and there's no question this low-hanging branch from a palm tree, and it's like, they're like grapevines. They look like little green grapes, like marble size. And so again, every palm produces different types of fruits, and they may begin green, right? And then they ripen. Later on, they're turning all different kind of colors: black, blue, orange, yellow, red, brown. The cabbage palmetto produces fruit that eventually becomes black, and yeah, it's good food for wildlife. But for us, no. Here's the important rule: don't eat a palm fruit just because you see an animal eating it. What's good for a squirrel may not be good for us. And listen, most of the palm fruits are edible, but for us, no. But I'm sure you're thinking, what about the coconut? Yes, the coconut is a palm tree, and the coconut is the fruit of the coconut palm tree. So yeah, the quintessential island in the Caribbean, you see those palm trees, and underneath them are the coconuts. Now listen to this. They're thick, fibrous husk of the coconut. It helps them float, right? So it can fall near the coast, it can get in the water, and yeah, it can travel far away and end up on another spot, on another coastline, another island, and it'll begin germinating again. So that's why they're always associated with the tropical coastlines and islands. Another famous palm fruit is the date palm. When you eat a date, you're eating the fruit of a palm tree. Humans have cultivated date palms for thousands of years, especially again in these areas that are hot, dry, down in the south. Now, in terms of its life cycle, some, again, grow pretty quickly, others don't. But eventually, the mature palm flowers, the flowers are pollinated, the fruit develops, and the seeds are dispersed by animals, water, just gravity, or us, right? Then they germinate. The cycle begins again. And this surprises a lot of people. For lots of years, a palm tree can look more like a shrub than a tree because it's developing its root system and crown before producing the obvious tall trunk that we associate with a mature palm tree. How long do they live? Well, again, depending upon the species, but listen to this. No doubt they live for decades like any tree up here in the Northeast. Some can live well beyond a century. I mean, listen to this. There's this Chilean wine palm, and it's been known to live several hundred years. And here's something else. How about those hurricanes? How do they survive all the hurricanes? Now, you will see, of course, some come down, but they have this remarkable feature. Think about the shape. A large northern tree has this huge network, right, of rigid branches, and they extend outwards, and that's why they're all over the place. Branches are falling down left and right. A palm is constructed differently. Its trunk is really flexible, and its fronds can bend, again, its leaves, and bend and stream with the winds. That's why you'll see these dramatic hurricane videos where the palms are bending violently, but they're still standing up. So just to wrap up the podcast, hey, pop culture, logos, you're going to see the palm tree all over the place. I think the one that's iconic is the Beverly Hills palm-lined streets. I mean, again, it's all over the South. I know South Carolina has the cabbage palmetto as part of its state flag. Just a couple fun facts. I found this out. The Coco de Mer palm, which is apparently in this beautiful archipelago country called Seychelles. It's located in the western Indian Ocean, just off the eastern coast of East Africa. Well, it has some of the largest seeds on the planet that can exceed 30 pounds, and yeah, it's a palm tree. And didn't know if you knew this, but there's palm oil. It comes from a palm fruit. The African oil palm tree produces fruits, and the oil is extracted, and those palms are the source of really one of the world's most widely used vegetable oils. And yeah, they've been around forever. They were back during the age of the dinosaurs. Fossils have proved this. So, hey, bottom line, few plants are better advertising, if you think about it, right, than the palm tree. You put a nice palm silhouette on a sign, and without saying a single word, you're already telling people, think happiness, think relaxation, think warm weather, sunshine, and a nice, great time. Friends, I hope you enjoyed learning all about the palm tree. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group. It'll be in the links. We have a YouTube channel. It'll be in the links. And very soon we have a Patreon channel. It's not really a channel. It's a place you can go to financially support the podcast. Always appreciate the reviews, the ratings. So until next time, have fun and keep learning.